Today it's a review for the test. The test is tomorrow. It's on rational functions, and we started off with an adding one. That was a little too easy. Now we're doing a subtract one. Now we got to multiply both sides by something to make a common denominator. Hopefully you know enough to say the denominator should be x minus 3 times x plus 4. Why? Because you just multiply the two denominators. This is a great way to find a common denominator. All right. So then if I'm going to make that happen, this side needs to be multiplied by x plus 4 and x plus 4. This side, x minus 3, x minus 3. And do I actually need to multiply this all out? No. If you can factor it, you should. It's already factored. It's good. Just leave it that way. Now, how about the top? The top does need to have some work done. 1 times x plus 4 is x plus 4. And this, I know some of you messed this up. You probably said negative 2x and then minus 3 when you really should have said, minus 3. You probably said minus 6 where you really should have said plus 6. I want you to think about that. That negative gets missed a lot. Probably 1 out of every 5 of you probably screwed that up. This is a negative 2 times x makes negative 2x. And a negative 2 times negative 3 makes positive 6. All right. So I'm going to put this all together now. And I have the negative 2x and the positive x makes negative x. And then I have a 4 and a 6 makes 10 all over the denominator, which, since it's already factored, let's leave it that way. There you go. Now, could they ask you follow-up questions about that? Like, what's its domain? Yeah, that's what I'm going to do right now. Would you please look at this? And there's a question first, and then I'll ask you some questions like domain. Why don't you start on domain while I answer this question? Yes.
So I did differently. I did like.
Okay, what'd you get for your answer?
Same thing.
Great, then you're fine. There's other ways to do it. Okay, so I'd like you to go domain. I'd like you to figure out, not the range. We pretty much never do that on this kind of a function. But we usually do the whole, if there is one, and the vertical asymptote. The things that don't work in the function are either wholes or asymptotes. And then the last thing is the kind I taught you yesterday, the horizontal asymptotes. I suggested that you remember them as bob, sob, and bot. Bigger on bottom, bigger on top, same on both. And there's rules for those three, and if you didn't memorize them yesterday, you got to get them down today. So the horizontals, the horizontals, y equals things. The verticals, the zerticals. The whole is always something comma something. And the domain always starts with all reals except x cannot be blah. Now, I know some of you noticed on the key they're written light with a whole bunch of parentheses and unions and stuff. You can do it that way. It's okay. But I personally think it's a lot easier to just write it this way, and I will accept the all reals except x is not this and x is not that. There's more than one way to write domains. In fact, in pre-calc we teach you 4 ways to write domains. This is one of them, and it's fine. All right, I'm going to pause for a minute while you answer those 4 questions about this function right here. I thought it was maybe 300, but anyway, I just wanted to be on the safe side and say at least 200. All right, so the whole here, there isn't one. Why? Because there's nothing factors on the top. So if there's something factored and we got like an x minus 3, then there would have been a whole, but there wasn't. So there's no whole. You would just say none. These things are what x can't be. They can't be 3. Notice not negative 3, 3. And not 4, but negative 4. Those are either wholes or asymptotes. Since we've established that there is not a whole, nothing to cancel up there, then they're both asymptotes. Did you catch that it was x equals 3 and x equals negative 4 were the vertical asymptotes? And then Bob tells us the horizontals. Is this a bigger on the bottom? Yes, it is. And therefore, what's the rule for Bob's? Y equals 0 plus whatever's on the outside. There's nothing on the outside moving it up or anything. So it's just 0. If it had been a sob, that's y equals a ratio of the leading coefficients. And if it had been a bot, the answer would have been none. Bots have no asymptotes. Okay. That covers a lot of what you need to know, but not everything. Here's another topic that usually gets people pretty well. I got a line here at x equals, let's say, 5. Sorry, y equals 5. But it's got a hole right here at, let's say, 3. What's the rational function that would make that? Pause for a minute. See if you can write me the equation that would give you a line that goes straight across like that at 5, but has a hole at 3. Pay attention. All right, so my advice, act like there's no hole and then tell me the equation. Much easier, but still a little bit of work there. Well, what does the equation always look like? Starts with y equals, and then in this case, it's y equals 5, just 5. Think of it this way. We're supposed to say the y-intercept out here, right? And some of you are thinking it should be x plus 5, but that'd be if it has a slope of 1. What does a flat, straight across line have a slope of? 0. So you could have said 0x plus 5, but 0x just disappears, so it's just y equals 5. So there's my equation. Exactly. So what about the hole? What about that thing now? That's when you finish it, and you put something that would cancel on the top and the bottom. What do you think, Dale? Yep. Who had that figured out? Good. 5 is on the outside, and it's on the top, because the outside is the top. Think of it this way. If I put that 5, and you're saying you want it on the outside, let's put it here. Do you get that that really means 5 over 1?
Wait, but would that still be right?
Oh, you think I should go this plus 5. No. Because this part would cancel, but it would become 1, and then wouldn't your equation read y equals 1 plus 5, which would mean y equals 6? So no, you don't want to do that. You want the 5 to be right there, or in front like right here, which would really mean it would climb up to the top anyway. Okay. And I think that covers most of it. So what I want to do is give you a little last quiz. It's got 4 parts. Okay, I'm going to talk you through these 4 questions. Part A, I'm going to consider that the easy one. You just have to simplify it. So you start by factoring it, some stuff will cancel, and then it says D after it. What do you think that means? Domain. Find the domain of it. Next, part B. That's one of those kind where you have to make the equation that's got a hole in it. But hint on this one, same as before, act like there is no hole and figure out that equation. I told you on the directions it says slope equals 1. And the hole is at blah, blah, blah. But don't worry about the hole until you got your equation first. Then you're going to put in what do you need on the top and the bottom to make that hole. Part C. I would say that's a pretty difficult question because it's got factor by grouping in it, and it's got 4 parts: domain, verticals, horizontals, and the hole. But yet most kids got them all right last hour. I think we practiced that kind of a lot. So, and last but not least, you graph D, and it includes a hole. Don't forget to put the hole in the graph, or you will get it marked wrong. The hole looks like this. When you graphed it and you're going along and there's a hole at like 6, then you put an empty spot like that. You can. It's even better if you just erase, put an empty spot right above the 6 or whatever. And this one doesn't have a hole at 6, but that's kind of what a hole looks like. Okay, try those 4 questions. Check you on those in about 5-7 minutes. Here we go. Top one. X plus 5. X plus 1 over x plus 5, x minus 5. You got to be able to handle much tougher factoring than that, but I didn't want to make this into just a factoring test. So, watch out for tougher factoring. But that cancels. And what's the domain? Well, does that count in the domain or not? Yeah, there's 2 things that it can't be. All reals, x cannot be these 2 things, 5 and negative 5. And one of them's a hole, and one of them's an asymptote, but they didn't even ask you all that, but that's how you write the domain. How many would have got that domain question right? Okay, good. Then, question, yes? Yep, I know what you mean. It writes it out like this: negative infinity until it's negative 5, union with negative 5 to 5, union with 5 to infinity. I'm accepting either one of those ways. You can write it either way. Okay, next, part B. I suggested that you act like there was no hole, and then your equation would have just been y equals, it says slope of 1, 1x plus 1. Can I just leave it like that? Nope, because there is a hole. And the hole is something canceling on the top and the bottom. So I go like this, and I go x and x, and then I say what should be there so that it would make a hole at 1 comma. Well, 1's the key thing. 1's the x of it. So we go minus 1, minus 1. And then, unless you want to lose a fair amount of credit, include that. How many of you remember to include the parentheses around the x plus 1? Otherwise, if you don't have those, do you get only the 1 is being multiplied by the x plus or the x minus 1? You need parentheses here. Who had that perfect? Okay. Why do we have the x plus 1? Because that's the equation without the hole factored in. This line right here, that line is the equation y equals x plus 1. It's got a slope of 1. It goes through 1 for a y-intercept. All right. Moving on to part C. Part C factors, and if you can factor it, you should. So we factor out the x squared, and we get x plus 5. We factor out the negative 10, and we get x plus 5. Final version of it factored would go like this. X plus 5 on top, and then an x squared minus 10. On the bottom, x plus 5 and x minus 5. Then those cancel. That tells me there's a hole there at negative 5 comma something. Now what do I put that in? I put it in the resulting function. This here. I put the negative 5 in there. And you get negative 5 squared is 25 minus 10 is 15 over negative 5 minus 5 is negative 10. So that's, you could reduce that more if you wanted to, but let me think, it would be 3 halves. Yes, negative 3 halves. All right, the horizontal, we asked Bob about that. Is this a Bob Sauber bot? Is it bigger on top? Hint, yes, it's bigger on top. Now some people are like, but wait a minute, can I use this one? Yeah, it's still bigger on top. Either way, it's bot. So there's no bots. Next one, the verticals. The vertical asymptotes, those things that are in the domain either cause there to be vertical asymptotes or holes. So let's write out the domain. X not equal to negative 5 and x not equal to 5. Then, final answer, vertical asymptotes, not the hole. The hole was the negative 5. That's the vertical asymptote. Go ahead. X plus, sorry, wait a minute. Y equals x. X equals 5. There. Okay. Now, that answered one of the tougher ones. Here's the toughest one. Just because there's so many places on the graphing one to mess up. Like you could forget to put the hole in. I warned you, so you probably didn't forget that. You could forget to factor it. But if you do everything right, this one really wasn't that bad. And that cancels that, and there's a hole there. There must be a 1 left over. Y equals 1 over x minus 3. That means I have an asymptote that would normally be here, but instead it's moved 3 to the right. Sorry about that. And I'm going to grab this, move it over. Actually, that's a solid line. That's not how they usually look. Let me make a real one. There. There's my asymptote. And now, what kind of other asymptote is there? Is it a bigger on bottom, bigger on top, or same on both? Bigger on the bottom. So y equals 0. So I can put an asymptote there. Okay. And then do you know what this parent graph looks like? I hope so. It looks kind of like that. And then the hole. Where is the hole? The hole is going to be, wait, that's not the hole. That's the hole. And the hole is where x is negative 3. Negative 3 comma what? You stick it in the resulting function, which is this guy. And I get 1 over negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. So negative 3 comma negative 1/6. That's like right about here. And then the function just keeps going like that. If you forget that hole, though, it's wrong. Last thought, you have to have a couple key points. That and that are key points. Otherwise, you just have a sketch. You don't have a graph unless you have actual points that work. The homework for tonight is a homework assignment, and I did tell you before, but I'll remind you, you can skip any 3 parts of that, like part A, part B, part C, part D, any 3 parts you want to skip. So I recommend you skip parts that are actually kind of easy for you that might waste your time. Work on ones that are hard. Any 3 parts. No, you can't skip problem 1, which has 18 parts. Yes. Okay, that's all I have for the video for today.